It's late, I know, but I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we're stepping into the frostbitten silence of medieval Eastern Europe, not as a king or a warrior, not even as a wandering bard with somewhere warm to sleep, but as someone at the bottom of everything. This is a slow, haunted walk through a day in the life of a Slavic farm slave. Frozen hands, brutal beatings, and the kind of despair that doesn't end at death. But also, surprising moments of resistance, glimpses of joy, and a quiet, stubborn humanity that history tried to forget. If you find something meaningful here, if it helps you sleep or feel seen, please do subscribe. I know everyone says it, but for creators like me, it makes a real difference. No algorithms, just a quiet vote to keep this kind of storytelling alive. And if you're listening while making tea or folding laundry at 3 a.m., I'd love to know, where are you right now? What time is it, wherever you are? Dim the lights. Wrap something warm around your shoulders. Now let's drift back in time. Before the pain, there was silence. That's the part most people don't imagine. Not the whip, not the hunger, not the salt-sick prayers muttered into hay, but the silence. The kind that falls like a heavy wool blanket across the world when snow begins to bury the earth. It wasn't always white, you know. Sometimes it was more the color of ash soaked through with soot, manure, and blood. But it was quiet. And that, in some awful way, was almost worse. Our subject leads call him Ilya. Though his name is already lost, time was born into bondage in what we now call Ukraine. But in 1140 of the Common Era, it wasn't Ukraine. It wasn't even Rus as we romanticize it. It was hunger with a little religion smeared on top. His home, a thatch-roofed hut shared with 6 others, and the perpetual stink of dying straw. His job, everything, but mostly surviving long enough to do it again tomorrow. There's a misconception that medieval serfs were simply peasants with taxes, that slavery was a southern, colonial invention. But the Slavic world had its own brand of inescapable servitude. In some places, if you were born to a slave mother, the church didn't even mark your baptism, not because they didn't believe you had a soul, but because they weren't quite sure it mattered. And so Ilya, his shoulders hunched long before his spine gave out, learned the rhythm of submission before he could walk. The fields were not his. The oxen were not his. Even the beatings, when they came, felt like borrowed pain, something he was just holding for someone else. But today, on this particular winter morning, the cold comes early, before light, before sound, before anything. He wakes not to a rooster or a bell, but to the shuddering gasp of his own lungs, remembering how to breathe. This is not the dramatic part. There is no chase, no burning village, just the slow, endless ache of waking up to the same nightmare in the same body, under the same sky, and in a strange, unspeakable way, that might be the cruelest thing about it. There's a kind of hunger that sharpens the mind. Not the romantic kind, no poetic edge to it. Just the raw, feral hum in your stomach that makes everything else irrelevant. By midwinter, Ilya doesn't dream of escape. He dreams of bread. Not warm bread, not buttered, just dry, crusted black bread. Hard enough to chip a tooth, heavy enough to bruise a child if you threw it. This morning, like most, he is given half a hunk and told to be grateful. And he is, but not in the way you'd expect. Because somewhere in that splintered, salted lump of grain and God knows what, he sees a kind of proof. He's still here. Sometimes surviving isn't defiance, it's paperwork. It's saying, look, I'm still signed in. My body is still showing up for whatever this is. In the corner of the hut, an older woman, maybe his mother, Maybe just the one who raised him when his mother died of fever snorts awake. She mutters something about frost goblins stealing her toes again, then laughs a little. It's not a pretty laugh. It sounds like something cracked under ice, but Ilya laughs too. Because if you don't laugh at your frostbitten toes, you'll cry when they fall off. And tears are a waste of salt. There is humor here. Not the kind you'd share at a feast, but the private, desperate humor of the damned. Like the boy who named all the lice in his hair. Or the time a rat stole a crust from the overseer's plate, and they all watched in silence as the rat scurried across the room like a holy relic. Blessed be the rodent, someone whispered, and for a moment they were almost free. This is the part of history we don't teach. The jokes, the nicknames, the tiny, silly rebellions. Not because they change anything, but because they're all you have when everything else has been stripped away. Ilya chews slowly, not because he's savoring it, but because he's afraid if he finishes too soon, he'll remember he's still hungry. His fingers are already numb, his breath comes in clouds, but he has his crust, he has his morning laugh, and for the next few minutes, that's enough, until the shouting starts. It always starts the same way, someone yelling a name that isn't yours. And yet you rise, because it might be yours next. Would you like to continue? The shouting is muffled at first, half swallowed by snow, half by sleep. Then it grows louder, cruder, more impatient. Not angry, exactly, just entitled. Like someone kicking a dog they think is already theirs. Ilya doesn't flinch. That would be a waste of effort. Instead, he watches as a boy no more than 12, all elbows and panic, stumbles into the hut. Vasil, the boy stammers. They want Vasil now. The old woman doesn't move. She never does, not anymore. The man next to her spits into the straw and groans as he stands. But Ilya knows Vasil is him today. That's the trick of life here. Your name is yours until someone else needs it. Then it floats away like steam from a half-frozen pot. You learn not to be too attached. Outside, the wind scours his face like regret. The overseer stands near the cart with the expression of a man who hasn't slept in 3 winters and no longer cares. Vasil, he growls, and Ilya nods like that's always been his name. The task is simple. Haul timber from the edge of the woods to the bathhouse that no slave will ever enter. The logs are heavier than memory. The path is iced like a warning. One of the boys slips. The overseer laughs, not kindly. But Ilya doesn't slip. He has learned how to walk like he doesn't mind the cold, how to bear weight like it was always his, how to disappear even when he's the one being watched. There's a kind of genius to it. Not brilliance. The world doesn't reward brilliance in people like him. But something else. Endurance dressed as obedience. A kind of quiet brilliance that says, I know I am nothing to you, but I am still here. He hauls the log, another, then another. His hands bleed a little, but the frost clots it before it stains. And as he drags the last one to the bathhouse steps, he sees something strange. A footprint, small, clean. Probably the Lord's daughter, come out early to feel the snow for herself. The print is too perfect, too soft, untouched by weight, like someone who's never been told they were replaceable. Ilya stares at it for a moment, not with envy, not even with anger, just curiosity. What must it be like, he wonders, to leave a mark and know it will be remembered? Then the whip cracks, and the print is gone. It doesn't take much. 1 foot wrong on the ice. 1 moment too slow. 1 breath taken at the wrong angle. The whip doesn't ask questions. It isn't a tool of discipline. Not really. It's punctuation, an exclamation mark carved into the flesh to remind you that you are not the one writing the sentence. Ilya doesn't cry out. That would be giving it too much meaning. Instead, he lets the pain settle into him like smoke into wood, something inevitable, something that will linger long after the fire is out. The overseer doesn't even look angry. He barely looks at all. Just another line drawn on a back already etched like a poorly kept ledger. Somewhere behind him, one of the younger boys stifles a cough. It's not sympathy, it's fear. Fear that if he watches too long, he'll be next. Fear that the lash might remember his name. But no one says anything. That's the rule. You don't interfere. You don't flinch. You don't speak. You absorb. Pain, after all, is communal here. Even when it's not your body, it's still your life. The day drags. Not like a slow stream, but like a broken ox. Each hour, another rut. Each minute, another stumble. By noon, the sun is a cruel joke, barely warm enough to melt a lie. Ilya works until his muscles hum with that strange, intimate burn. The kind that says, yes, you're alive, but maybe you shouldn't be. At one point, someone hands him a cup of water. It's not charity, it's protocol. Hydrated slaves don't die as quickly, and dead slaves don't work. He drinks, not too fast, not too slow. There's a rhythm to survival, even here, especially here. And as he sets the cup down, he notices his fingers again, swollen, purple at the edges. He can't feel the tips anymore. He wonders, briefly, what it would mean to lose them. Not in some grand, tragic way, just, practically. How would he tie the twine? How would he carry the buckets? Would they let him rest, or simply beat him with smaller tasks? There is no poetry in this moment. No grand metaphor, just a man in the cold, with hands that may not make it to spring, and still he stays, because that's the only power he has left, to endure. By afternoon, the sky begins to close in. It happens slowly, like a child trying to sneak out of the room without being noticed. The pale grey bleeds into steel, then charcoal, then something darker than color. Not quite black, not quite blue, just the absence of warmth, pressed flat against the earth. Ilya notices, because he always does. He's not allowed to track time like a free man. No bells, no clocks, but he's learned to read the sky like scripture. And right now, it's telling him, hurry. They call it twilight, as if it's a gentle thing. But here, in this place, it feels more like an ambush. The cold deepens, the shadows lengthen. The wolves come closer, though not too close. Even they know what kind of cruelty walks on two legs. The last task of the day is familiar. Feed the animals, mend the gate, bury the body. No one speaks that last one aloud, but they all know, earlier, someone had stopped moving. A man, older than Ilya, but not by much, too tired, too broken, too slow, and when the lash didn't bring him back, they left him in the snow like a question no one wanted to answer. By evening, they dig a shallow grave. No priest, no prayer, just for slaves and a wooden spade, trying not to think about how soft the soil is under all this cold. There's a reason they bury them fast. Not because of disease, but because the sight of a dead man in slave rags can make you start asking things. Like, when was the last time someone said his name? Did he ever have a choice? Will anyone remember that he laughed once? Ilya doesn't ask, he just digs. Each motion scraping meaning out of mud. Each breath frosting the air in front of him like a ghost trying to leave. They don't talk about the dead here. Talking makes them real. And real things demand dignity. which is dangerous. When the hole is deep enough, barely knee-height, they roll the body in. No ceremony, no eulogy, just a grunt and a silence. And then, something strange. A girl 7, maybe 8 years old, steps forward from the line of huts, barefoot, hair tangled, face smudged with the day. She drops a small object into the grave. A stone, not a fancy one, not carved, just a round, smooth thing, washed by some forgotten river, and then she walks away. No one stops her. No one comments. Ilya stands there for a moment longer, not because he believes in anything, but because sometimes silence feels heavier than work. He looks down at the grave, at the stone resting against frozen ribs, and for the first time all day, he feels the weight of the sky pressing down on his chest. It is not grief, it is something lonelier, a kind of grief for the living, a reminder that they are still here, still breathing, still able to bury the dead, and not themselves. Night falls like a punishment, but the work is done. For now, night is not rest, not here. In the world Ilya inhabits, night is a form of waiting, waiting for the cold to slip through the cracks in the wood, waiting for the cough in the dark to stop or not, waiting for a dawn that might not come soon enough, or at all. Inside the hut, the air is a dense, human fog. 7 bodies share a space smaller than most modern kitchens, and the smell is something alive. Wet wool, stale breath, unwashed limbs, ash, and the faint acidic trace of fear. It's the scent of survival without ceremony. They do not sleep in beds, they sleep in piles, limb tangled against limb, like wolves pretending they are not afraid. Ilya finds his usual corner near the back wall, beside the collapsed heap of straw they still call a mattress. Someone once tried to give it a name, Old Softy, but that joke stopped being funny when the lice got involved. He lies down slowly, like a man learning his own body again. Each muscle a complaint, each joint a quiet, passive scream. The girl who dropped the stone is here too, curled beneath her older sister like a mouse hiding beneath a coat. They don't speak, but the girl opens one eye as Ilya settles in. Not in fear, not even in curiosity, just to see, just to confirm that he's still a part of this the living, breathing swarm of barely held together people that call themselves a family, though none of them are related. And then, silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, choking silence of people who've run out of words. Words cost energy, words invite notice, so they lie in the dark, listening to the wood creak under its own frost, listening to rats scrabble across beams, listening to a world that does not know they exist, and would not care if it did. Somewhere outside, a dog howls, then another, then silence again. They say animals sense spirits, but here, in this corner of history, spirits do not linger. Even the dead do not want to stay. Ilya closes his eyes, not because he expects sleep, but because there's nothing left to see. And in that moment, something strange stirs in him. Not hope, not quite, more like a question, the kind that arrives when your mind is too tired to resist it. If I died tomorrow, would anything change? It is not self-pity. He is too used to himself for that. It is simply a calculation. He counts the things that tie him to this world. One cracked bowl, a strip of cloth that once belonged to his brother, a rhythm of footsteps that the children recognize in the dirt. It's not much, but it's something. And in a life like this, something is everything. He exhales. The room breathes with him, and the night, unchanging, moves on. It's easy to forget what darkness really means. Today, we wrap it in electricity. We fend it off with screens and headlights and glowing clocks on bedside tables. But in Ilya's world, night is not absence. It is presence. It presses in. And when the moon doesn't show herself, when clouds roll low and thick like bruised woolder, dark becomes a creature. That's why there's the candle. One, just one, carefully rationed. Not wax, not really fat rendered from a dead pig months ago, poured into a cracked jar and scented with a bone sliver wick. It stinks, but it burns. Tonight, they light it, not for celebration, not for warmth, but because the youngest has a fever, and sometimes light scares the ghosts away. That's what the old woman says, anyway. No one remembers her real name. They just call her Baba, not because she's their grandmother, but because she's the only one who remembers what it meant to have one. She lights the candle with shaking fingers. Its flame flickers like it's afraid to be here. Ilya watches it from his corner. It casts strange shadows long, stretching ones that make the hut look bigger than it is, almost like a cathedral if you squint, or a crypt. The girl with the fever moans softly. Baba dabs her forehead with a rag dipped in melted snow. There are no doctors, no potions, no prayers that haven't already been spoken into the walls. Just this, an old woman, a flickering flame, and the quiet defiance of the sick trying not to die. Outside, the wind screams. Inside, no one speaks. But slowly, as the night thickens, the candle draws them in. One by one, the others open their eyes. Not to talk, not to confess, just to see. It's strange how something as small as a flame can make a group of people feel human again. For a moment, the hut is not a prison. It is a hearth. It is a campfire. It is memory. And then, because they are still themselves, someone laughs. Quiet, choked, inappropriate. It's the boy who lost 3 fingers last spring. He mutters something about don't let the flame hear your secrets, or it'll snitch to the saints. The others chuckle. Even Baba allows a breath of amusement. It's not that the joke is funny. It's that the moment exists. And moments like that, well, they are everything. The candle burns lower. The girl still burns hotter. But for now, in this fragile bubble of shadow and firelight, they are more than their suffering. They are people, just for a little while longer. There's a strange ritual Ilya performs when he can't sleep. He counts the ghosts. Not real ones, not spirits with faces or names. Just the absences, the missing. He does the math in his head like a bedtime prayer. 3 men died in the harvest. 2 froze before the first snow. 1 girl vanished. No one asked where. 1 boy hanged himself behind the grain shed, using rope that should have been mending the plow. That's 7. 7 fewer breathing bodies. 7 more empty spaces around the fire. He counts them not because he misses them exactly, but because it helps him understand his own shape in the dark. Every loss makes his own outline clearer. He is the negative space around someone else's absence. Some nights, that's comforting. Most nights, it's not. Tonight, he counts slowly, not to remember, but to measure. How many ghosts does it take before a place becomes haunted? He doesn't know the answer, but he suspects it's fewer than most people think. Baba whispers something to herself in a language no one else understands. It's not Slavic. Not exactly. Older, slower, like river water dragging a branch. Ilya listens. He doesn't ask what it means. He just lets it wash over him. Somewhere near the wall, the lice are having their own night festival. Scratching is discouraged after lights out. Too loud, too risky. but someone scratches anyway. Desperation is louder than rules. Outside, the storm settles into a sullen growl, the kind of wind that doesn't rage, just waits. Ilya closes his eyes and pictures the ghosts lining up. Not menacing, not angry, just tired. Like everyone else here. He imagines them sitting quietly at the edge of the room, legs crossed, hands folded, watching, waiting, not for vengeance, just for company. And for the first time in a long while, Ilya whispers something, not a prayer, not a plea, just one word. Soon, not because he wants to die, but because he understands that someday he will join the math, he will be counted. He just hopes someone remembers to count him. There are dreams, sometimes. Not the soft kind, where fields stretch forever and bread grows on trees. Those belong to children, and Ilya is no longer that. His dreams come in fragments, scattered, sharp. The mind trying to stitch something warm out of a body that's always cold. Tonight, he dreams of teeth. Not his own, but falling from the mouth of the overseer, one by one. Each tooth clatters onto a wooden table like coins. In the dream, Ilya picks one up. It hums in his hand, warm and pulsing like a living thing. He doesn't know why it matters, but it does. Then the scene shifts, as dreams do. He's standing in a hall too grand for this world. Columns taller than trees. A fire that burns without smoke. And there are people, dozens of them, dressed in linen and gold, laughing as if laughter were endless. Someone beckons him forward. A woman with hair like moonlight. She holds a bowl of water. He drinks, and suddenly he can remember everything. The names of the dead, the songs his mother hummed, the color of his brother's eyes, even the feel of sunlight on his face. Real sunlight, not this pale northern lie, but something thick and golden, like honey poured from a warm jar. He wants to stay there. He wants to stay so badly, but the cold always finds him. In dreams and in waking, it finds him. He wakes with a gasp, quiet, practiced. No one stirs. The candle has burned itself down to nothing, just a wet stub curled into the dirt. The girl with the fever is silent. He doesn't check if she's breathing, not because he doesn't care, but because he already knows. The room is darker now, the kind of dark that feels personal. He closes his eyes again, not to dream, just to float, because sometimes floating is enough, not flying, not fleeing, just being untethered for a while. He does not wish for more. That's what people don't understand about the enslaved. They don't dream of palaces. They dream of less pain, less cold, less remembering. The dream is not to escape. The dream is to disappear, quietly, completely, but not tonight. Tonight, he stays. It doesn't happen gently. There is no swell of music, no golden shaft of light through an open window. Just a sound, sharp, clipped bark from outside, followed by a thud. The overseer dropping his staff against the post. A warning, a rhythm, a start. Morning, in Ilya's world, does not ask permission. It arrives like a creditor. He opens his eyes to the grayness that counts as dawn here. Not bright, just less dark. His body has not moved much. Stiffness clings like another skin. His legs don't respond at first. One arm has gone numb, curled beneath his side. He drags it free and flexes the fingers slowly, like he's reminding them what they're for. The fever girl is still. Stillness can mean many things here. He doesn't check. Someone else will. Instead, he rises. Around him, others do too. The ritual of the half-dead. A shuffle, a grunt, a scratch, a groan, each person peeling themselves out of the shared nightmare they call sleep. The old woman coughs. The boy with the missing fingers fumbles for his boots. One man, older than the rest, doesn't rise at all. Baba leans over him, squints, nods once. "He's gone," she says, like she's telling the weather. No one cries, no one panics. They simply step around the body, because the morning has come, and with it, the quota. There will be work to do, logs to haul, pigs to slaughter, fences to mend. Someone will be beaten, someone will be blamed, someone will lose something they didn't know they still had. But all of that can wait. For now, there is water to drink, cold, bitter, pulled from a well that tastes faintly of rust and regret. And there is bread, smaller than yesterday's piece. The living consume what the dead no longer need. And Ilya, his bones aching, his hands stiff takes, his bite without complaint. Not because he's brave, but because it's the only thing left to do. This is the part of slavery no story likes to tell. Not the beatings, not the escape attempts, but the ordinary days. The ones that stretch so long and dull that they blur into nothing. Where the greatest act of resistance is to keep waking up. He looks at the fire pit. Cold ashes. He looks at the sky. Still iron. And then he steps outside, into the frost, into the noise, into whatever this day will be. Because he is still here. It sits just beyond the trees, like a rumor that forgot it wasn't supposed to be real. The master's house, larger than a chapel, smaller than a palace, a contradiction of timber and pride. Its roof glinsed faintly with new thatch. The walls are sealed tight against wind, unlike the huts below, and the window's glass, imported from somewhere west, blink like suspicious eyes over the estate. Ilya has never been inside. He's seen the steps, once, when he carried wood close enough to feel the heat from the kitchen fires. He saw the white dog, too small, clean eyes like old pearls. The dog barked once, a short, offended sound, then pissed on Ilya's boot. The boy holding the gate had laughed, called the dog a prince. "Prince has better manners than you, serf," he'd said. Ilya said nothing, because laughter doesn't feed you, and answers get you whipped. Today, the order comes. 3 men to the manor. Garden work. 1 cart. Garden work in the dead of winter is a strange phrase, but they all know what it means. Appear busy, clear snow. Trim the trees that don't need trimming. Make the place look less like a graveyard. Ilya goes, not because he's chosen, because he's nearest a gate when the order is shouted. The walk to the manor is short, but every step is louder than it should be. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Snow has a way of telling on you. At the gate, they're made to wait. Not because anyone is preparing, but because waiting is part of the lesson. Eventually, a boy no older than Iliad, dressed in clean wool, with hands too soft for labor, waves them forward. He doesn't look at them, just turns and walks. They follow. The garden is mostly empty, twisted branches under snow, statues buried up to the neck in drifts. There's one of a woman with her hands outstretched, like she's pleading or offering. No one knows who she is, but they all know her name. Don't touch. The boy gestures toward a frozen bush. Clear that, then walks away. No further instruction, just assumption. Because of course they know what to do. Slaves know it's not about pruning, it's about presence. The master likes to see movement outside his window. It comforts him to see others struggle while he sips. Ilya begins, fingers numb, stomach hollow. He brushes snow from branches that don't care. Each flake that falls feels like a tiny laugh. And up in the window behind lace curtains, beside polished woods, someone watches. Not the master, not today, a child, maybe 8, maybe 9, wrapped in wool, eyes wide with wonder. She points at Ilya. He doesn't wave, but he doesn't look away either, because for the first time in weeks, someone sees him, even if they don't understand what they're looking at. She presses her face to the window like a cat, her breath fogging the glass into a cloud. Behind her, a fire crackles, lazily wood, too good for slaves, heat too generous to imagine. She has a doll in one hand. The other points straight at Ilya. For a second, he forgets where he is. The snow underfoot, the bush in his hands, the ache crawling up his spine. It all vanishes beneath the strange, unblinking gaze of a child who will never know hunger. He glances away quickly, instinctively. Staring is dangerous. Being noticed is dangerous. But so is forgetting that you're human. And the girl, she's still staring. Not cruelly, not kindly. Just watching children do that. They look before the world teaches them what not to see. After a moment, she raises the doll in greeting. It wears a little scarf, red and embroidered. Its arms are stiff, its face hand-painted with lips like a question. Ilya does not move, but inside something stirs. Not joy, not even sorrow, just memory. His sister had a doll like that, before the fever, before the winter that wouldn't end. It had been made of straw, not porcelain, stuffed with hay and wrapped in the torn hem of their mother's apron. They named it Masha, not after anyone, just because it felt like a name worth saying. He wonders where it ended up, probably burned, or eaten by rats, or buried with her. He brushes snow from the next bush. The cold bites deeper now, gnawing at the space between knuckles. Behind the window, the girl disappears, pulled away by an unseen hand. A moment later, the curtain falls. The world resumes. One of the other, Mengrega, older, with the permanent squint of someone who's seen too much sun and too little kindness lines, close. "You shouldn't look at them," he mutters. His voice is low, not scolding, just tired. "I wasn't," Ilya replies, but they both know he was. Gregor sighs. They think we're animals, but even animals aren't supposed to stare. Ilya doesn't answer, because in this place, conversation is like salt precious, dangerous, and best used sparingly. The day stretches on. They work in silence. Not out of respect, out of survival. And all the while, Ilya thinks of the girl, not because she was kind, not because she saw him, but because she reminded him of something he'd forgotten. That somewhere, outside the frost and the filth, there are people who do not know this life. People for whom pain is distant, for whom hunger is a fable, for whom warmth is a right, not a rare and passing privilege. He does not hate her for it. He envies her. But hate takes energy, and he needs that for the walk home. They're allowed to drink before the return. A mercy, by someone's definition. The boy with soft hands gestures toward the side of the manor, where a stone basin sits under a spout carved like a lion's mouth. The water trickles slow, clean, and so cold it rings like a bell in the throat. This is not their well. This is not their water. But today they are allowed. Ilya steps forward, waiting behind Gregor, who dips his face to drink and doesn't bother wiping his beard. The water clings to him like a second beard of ice. When it's Ilya's turn, he leans forward cautiously. The stone is smooth beneath his hands, worn from touch, but not his touch. He drinks, and the first swallow stings. His mouth is so dry, his throat so cracked, that it feels like swallowing needles. But he keeps drinking, because this is not the bitter well back by the huts. This water is clear, clean, a different kind of cold. It tastes like nothing, which is to sit, tastes like heaven. Behind him, the manor window opens slightly. A voice, soft, melodic, vaguely amused, floats down. Not too much. Don't let them burst, it's a joke. Maybe Ilya doesn't look up, not because he's afraid, but because he's afraid he might look up and feel something dangerous, like anger or recognition. He finishes his drink, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, and steps away. A boy too young to be working yet, just there to watch, to learn what being nothing looks like, asks quietly, "Do you think it comes from the same place as ours?" Ilya shrugs. No. The boy nods, as if that answer makes sense. As if, somehow, the water knows who deserves it. They begin the walk back, in silence, their footprints pressed into the path, snow filling them in almost as fast as they're made. Behind them, the manor sits still, a house without motion, a mouth without guilt. Inside, the girl is likely already busy forgetting him, her doll tucked beneath her arm, her eyes drifting to other things, horses, ribbons, music. Ilya doesn't blame her. Forgetting is the first luxury of the free. And some days, he envies that more than food, because forgetting is light, and memory, for people like him, is made of stone. The walk back is colder, not by degrees, but by mood. The sun dips lower than it should, smeared behind a sky that cannot decide whether to snow again or simply collapse. Ilya doesn't speak. Neither does Gregor, the third man, a quiet one whose name might be Luca, or might be something else. Coughs once, and then walks with his mouth half open, like he's trying not to taste the air. The path between manor and huts is narrow, worn, and always uphill on the return. A small indignity, but somehow worse than the big ones. Because it reminds you that nothing is ever given. Even gravity conspires. As they pass the old Willowdead now, bark peeled off for kindling years ago, year spots a mark, a scar on the trunk, low near the root, almost invisible in the shade. He knows it. He made it. Years ago, in another life, when his brother was still alive and they were both still small enough to believe in things like curses, they carved 2 lines and a circle, an old protection charm, half forgotten, half event. Keep wolves away, his brother had said. It hadn't worked. Not for the wolves with fur, not for the ones with titles. Still, the mark is there, faint, fading, but stubborn, like him. No one else notices it. Why would they? The world is full of things no one sees until it's too late. They reach the huts just before full dark. Smoke drifts from 3 chimneys, which means someone found wood and someone else is sick. The gate creaks. The dogs bark once, out of habit more than interest. And then, as if the day hasn't happened at all, they are back. Not welcomed, not greeted, just returned. Gregor coughs, spits, mutters something about frost in his lungs. Luca, if that's his name, shuffles toward the pig shed, where he sometimes sleeps on the excuse of guarding the feed. Ilya lingers. Only for a moment. He looks up, toward the grey smear where stars ought to be. Nothing, no light, no pattern, just cloud. He wonders, not for the first time, if they're still up there. The stars, the stories, the old gods and the people who once sang to them. Maybe they left. Maybe they're waiting for the right people to look again. But not tonight. Tonight, the sky keeps its secrets. and Ilya steps inside, because the cold doesn't care about metaphors, and neither do empty stomachs. Inside the hut, the air is thicker than it was this morning. Not warmer, just thicker. Like the smell of damp wood and old sweat has been boiled and left to rot in the corners. A fire burns low in the center pit. 3 pieces of wood, one of them more smoke than flame, crackling like bones, learning to lie. Someone fed it, probably Bubba, or the girl. Whoever it was, they used the good kindling. That's a rare decision. A small kindness. Ilya doesn't ask. He sits. The warmth doesn't reach his back. The fire is too small for that. It warms the front of your shins and leaves the rest of you aching. But it's something. And in this place, something is still a miracle. The old woman hums, barely audible, a tune that might have been a lullaby in another time, or a warning. The fever girl is gone. No one says it aloud. But there's an empty space where her blanket was, and no one steps there now. Someone has laid out bread. 6 pieces, uneven, crusty, hard. There were 7 pieces yesterday. The fire snaps. A boy tells a joke. Something about a priest and a pig. It's not funny, but someone laughs anyway. Because sometimes you laugh just to prove you still can. Ilya eats slowly, chews each bite like it's paper, swallows like it's sin. The warmth touches his fingers, barely, enough to sting, enough to remind him he's still in his skin. Across the room, the young girl stone giver, quiet watcher, stares into the flames. Her eyes are wide, too wide for sleep. He wants to tell her something, not a story, not a truth, just something, but he doesn't, because the words for comfort have all been burned already, used up on people who didn't make it. The fire flickers again. A draft pushes smoke into the room, and everyone shifts slightly, eyes watering. It's not enough to leave, but it's enough to feel it. The fire does that. It pretends to give more than it does, and we pretend to believe it. Not because we're fools, but because even lies, when warm, are better than cold truths. Ilya lies down, his back to the flame, his eyes to the wall. There is no peace, but there is pause, and sometimes that's the same thing. Morning does not arrive like a blessing. It creeps in like a pickpocket, tugging at blankets, stealing whatever softness the night might have offered. The fire is gone. Only ash remains still, faintly warm. If you press your palm to it, if you don't mind the smell of things that used to burn, no one speaks. The girl coughs. Bubba sighs. A man near the door rolls over and groans in a language that might be cursing or might just be pain. Ilya sits up. Hunger waits for him, not like a visitor. Like a landlord, he tries not to think about food. But hunger makes itself known in everything. The stiffness in his joints, the bite of morning air in his lungs, the way his body feels too heavy and too empty all at once. Today is different, not in a good way, but in the way all bad days begin. Someone has brought out the pot, not the eating pot, the other one, the deep one with the cracked lip, meant for stews that aren't really stews, meant for whatever can be scraped together, bones, mostly bones, sometimes pig, more often chicken. Once it had a rat, and no one mentioned it. Bubba is already at work. She adds water first frozen last night, now cracked into glassy shards. Then she drops in the bones. They clatter like teeth. No herbs, no salt, no illusions. Just heat and time and the soft wish that marrow might still live inside something long dead. Ilya watches her. Her hands are slow but sure, worn into shapes that match the tools she uses. She moves like someone whose body has forgotten what it means to rest. He helps, not because he's asked, but because doing nothing is worse. He carries more water, feeds the first kindling, blows gently until the flames rise enough to catch. The smoke smells of dust and memory. The others begin to stir, faces long, movements dull, each person measuring how much of themselves they can afford to use today. They are not lazy, they are depleted. There's a difference, and the pot begins to bubble. The sound is soft, hopeful, a lie, but they all pretend not to notice. Someone tells a story about a feast, a long table, bread with honey and slabs of fat. No one believes it, but they listen anyway, not for the details, but because the shape of the story is filling, even if its meat is not. Ilya stirs the pot with a stick. The bones swirl, clink, settle. He does not hope, but he does wait. And in this place, waiting is half of life. There is never enough. Not of bread, not of time, not of warmth, but especially not of food. And yet, somehow, every day they pretend there might be. This morning, the pot pretends to. Steam rises, carrying with it the hollow perfume of boiling water and bone, the kind of scent that might fool a stomach for half a second before it remembers how empty it is. Ilya sits near the fire, watching the water tremble with each bubble, each one a small, silent gasp, as if the pot itself is trying to apologize. Beside him, the girl is awake. Her eyes are darker than they should be for someone so small, not from sleep, from memory. Baba stirs the broth like it's a spell, and maybe it is. The way she moves, the ladle slow, deliberate, clockwork suggests belief, not in magic, but in pattern, in the illusion that control over one thing might mean control over something else. Someone asks how long. She does not answer, because hunger is not a clock, it is a sea, and they are all drifting. Eventually, the ladle lifts, just a little, enough to pour a mouthful into a wooden bowl. Then another, then another. No one rushes. Rushing is punished here not by the hand, but by the logic of fairness. There is an order, not written, but known. Baba serves the youngest first. The girl holds the bowl like it's gold. She doesn't sip, she waits. Waits until everyone has theirs. Then, as if on cue, they begin. It is not chewing, it is drinking. A slow, careful sipping of liquid that tastes like the memory of meat. Ilya drinks his. It coats his mouth, greasy in the way cold fat floats to the top and lingers. There's a piece of something cartilage, maybe soft enough to bite. He doesn't. He lets it sit on his tongue like a pebble, then swallows and waits. The heat moves through his chest like a false promise. His body pretends, for a moment, to believe that it's enough, that it will last. But he knows better. Hunger always comes back, not because you fed it wrong, but because some hungers are part of you, like a name, like a scar, like silence. He finishes his bowl. It is not satisfying, but it is gone, and that, in itself, feels like a kind of completion. After the bowls are emptied, the room holds still. No one moves for a while, as if the act of pretending they were fed has drained what little energy they had left. Ilya leans back against the wall, his fingers brushing the grooves in the wood. Names are scratched there. Dozens of them, some in full, some in symbols, some already fading under grease, soot, and time. He's never carved his knot, because he doesn't want to, but because some part of him still believes that marking himself here would be giving in, that if his name lives in this wall, he may never leave. Baba starts to gather the bowls. The girl helps her. She moves with the solemnity of someone who's learned early how to be small and useful, a dangerous kind of wisdom. The pot still simmers, faintly. No more food, just heat, and from that heat, Baba begins her other task. She pulls out the tallow, a jar, half full, saved from last season, pale, waxy, too precious to waste. It's not for eating, not anymore. It's for the saints. Not the real ones, not the gold leaf saints that live in the chapel up the hill. Those saints don't listen to people like Baba. They speak Latin. They wear robes. These saints live in corners, in windowsills, in the wood smoke and the cracks in the floor. Baba melts the fat slowly over the fire. No one asks. No one needs to. They all know the ritual. When it's warm enough, she pours a little into a small clay mold. A figure forms, rough, featureless, just a stub of a body and a head. A wax saint, to protect them, maybe, to witness, or just to be something that isn't hungry. Ilya watches her press a thread into its center, another wick, another offering. Then she lights it. The figure glows, slowly. A soft, flickering light that dances more than it burns. It doesn't last long. The wick is short. The wax is too thin. The flame stutters like a child trying to sing. But for those few minutes, it fills the room with something unexpected. Not hope, but grace. Grace in the sense that for once, the light is not from firewood stolen from the master's pile. Not from a candle meant to fool a lord into thinking the slaves were praying for him. This is theirs, made from scraps. Made for no one but themselves. And when it gutters out, Baba pinches the wick, places the stub on the windowsill, and says nothing. Neither does anyone else. Because here, silence is prayer. And prayer, like hunger, is something you carry without expecting an answer. The afternoon thins like gruel. Time stretches long and translucent, without much shape. There is work to do, of course. There is always work. But even labor slows in deep winter. The men patch tools. The women mend cloth with fingers too cold for thread. The children pretend not to be listening. And through it all, the hunger watches. Not just the ache in the belly, but the other hunger. The one no one talks about. The one that lives behind the ribs, deeper than food can reach. The hunger to be seen. Ilya feels it more on days like this, when there is no feast to envy, no beatings to survive, no cries from the manor, just stillness, the kind that makes your own thoughts louder. He walks to the edge of the woods, under pretense of gathering fallen branches. But really, he just needs to be somewhere the walls can't hear him. The trees are grey-barked and brittle, bare skeletal. He leans against one, lets the cold seep into his shoulder. The sky above is a sick color, the kind that makes you question whether the sun is rising or dying, and he waits, for what he doesn't know. Maybe for a sign, maybe for the wind to say something useful, maybe just for the silence to break into meaning. There's a bird nearby, too small to eat, too smart to be caught. It chirps once, a short, unimpressed sound. He almost laughs. The ground beneath him is frozen in places, soft in others. He kicks it gently, watches a root twitch beneath the snow. Life, even here. He remembers a story one of the few Baba still tells when she thinks the children aren't listening. A man so hungry he ate the bark from trees. And when the trees learned this, they began whispering to each other to grow their bark bitter. A parable about greed, maybe, or just an excuse for why the firewood smells like rot. Ilya closes his eyes. He tries not to think about the stew pot, about the girl's eyes, about how many bowls are left. He tries to imagine bread, not the taste, he can't remember that anymore. just the weight of it, in his hands, in his stomach, in a world where hunger is a visitor, not a landlord. A twig snaps behind him. He turns, just the boy, the one with the thin scar above his lip, carrying a bundle of twigs and a look like he's afraid to speak. He doesn't. They nod to each other, then turn back to the camp, because time moves and hunger waits. Evening begins the same way it always does, with smoke that doesn't rise high enough to mean anything, and footsteps that sound heavier than they are. The day hasn't ended, but it's begun pretending it has. The sun, such as it is, pulls down behind the hills like it's a shame to watch any longer. And the fire starts again, not because anyone is warm, but because there's nothing else to gather around. Tonight, there's no stew, no bones, just the memory of what boiled in the pot that morning, lingering in the clay as if flavor could be inherited. They pretend not to notice. Baba scrapes the bottom with a twig, gathering whatever grease she can coax from the corners. She smears it on bread, what's left of it, hands it off in strips. Ilya takes his. It bends, not because it's soft, but because it's weak. Flour and sawdust, maybe, or the stuff swept from the granary floor. Still, he eats. There is no conversation, no stories tonight, no jokes about pigs in priest robes, no whispers about saints in the rafters, just chewing, and the sound of fire pretending to matter. Someone coughs. Someone else mutters about the cold getting into the marrow. And then, quietly, the girl begins to cry. Not a scream, not even a whimper, just a single sob that leaks out like a secret she didn't mean to share. No one moves to stop her, because what is there to say? That she's lucky, that it could be worse, that at least she's not dead. They've all heard those lies before, from masters, from priests, from the parts of themselves that still want to believe in something. So they let her cry, just for a little. Then Baba hums, low, crooked, familiar, a melody from the old country, whatever that means now, a tune that doesn't have words anymore, but still knows the shape of comfort. The girl curls up, the sobbing slows, and around the fire the rest of them pretend that their bellies are full, that their backs are strong, that the gods, if they still exist, haven't forgotten them entirely. Ilya looks into the flames, sees the outline of his own hands, black against orange, burned in, hollowed out. He wonders if a fire could ever get hot enough to burn hunger itself. He doubts it, but still, he waits. Because that's what they do. They wait for food, for spring, for mercy, for a meal that never quite comes. He never talks about his brother. Not out loud. The others know he had one once. It's hard not to know, in a place this small, where death leaves more silence than space. But they've all learned the same rule. Don't mention what someone's lost, unless you're willing to lose something too. Tonight, the air is sharp, too clear for comfort. The kind of night where sound travels too far, and thoughts don't stay where you left them. Ilya sits outside. Not for long, just long enough to see the stars try to come out. They're faint, fickle, like memories, or promises made in the dark. He's not sure why tonight is different, why the hunger hasn't numbed his mind completely, but something about the girl's crying, or the way the fire guttered earlier, has pulled a thread loose in him, and now it's unraveling. His brother's name was Mikhail, Misha, when they were small, Mishenka, when their mother still sang. He was 2 years older, which meant nothing and everything. He took the beatings when Ilya was too young to run. He stole bread once, shared it, got caught, took the blame again. They'd buried him just after the first frost, 3 years ago. It wasn't the cold that killed him. It was something smaller. A cough that turned to blood. A fever that wouldn't go. A prayer that went unanswered. Ilya had held his hand until it stopped squeezing back, then kept holding it anyway. Because sometimes the only thing you can offer the dying is company. No one talks about Mikhail anymore, but Ilya sees him. Not in visions, not in dreams, in habits. The way he ducks under the doorway, the way he counts steps in pairs, the way he touches his collarbone when lying. All borrowed, all remnants. Ghosts don't always haunt the places they died. Sometimes they haunt the ones who stayed. Ilya remembers one thing in particular. A night like this, clear, cruel, cloudless. They'd snuck out to watch the sky. Mikhail had pointed upward and whispered, "They say each star is someone who escaped." Ilya had asked, "Escaped what?" Mikhail didn't answer, just smiled a little. That was the last time Ilya ever saw him smile. Now he looks up again, at the same sky. Fewer stars, maybe, or maybe just fewer eyes willing to look. And he wonders if Mikhail made it. If one of those pale lights is burning just for him. If escape, in the end, is not about running, but about being remembered. He presses his palm to the cold earth beside him, a greeting, a promise, or just a moment. Because grief, like hunger, is never really gone. It only changes shape. There's a saying Baba used to mutter, back when her voice was stronger and her mind still wandered freely. The wind remembers what people forget. At the time, Ilya thought it meant something spiritual, that maybe the wind carried the names of the dead, or the songs that used to be sung in kitchens, now filled with silence. But now, he wonders if it's simpler than that. The wind remembers because it takes everything. Smoke, ash, voices, whispers. And once it's taken them once, they're gone. It's the only thing left that knows they ever existed. Tonight, the wind is low, but sharp. It cuts sideways through the trees, curling into the bones of the hut, scraping the corners of the room where old memories hide. Inside, the others have drifted towards sleep, that half-sleep of exhaustion, not peace. But Ilya stays outside. He leans against the wall, listening to the wind push through the forest like a thief who's forgotten why he came. He thinks about Mikhail again. Not the death. The middle parts. The years where they were old enough to work, but young enough to still imagine they wouldn't die here. There was a winter when Mikhail made a game out of stealing kindling from the manor. He called it taxing the lords. Ilya would keep watch, eyes wide in the dark, and Mikhail would slip under the fence, barefoot and bold, coming back with just enough wood to stretch the fire one more night. He never got caught, not because he was clever, but because no one expects nothing to fight back. That was Mikhail's trick. He made them forget he could still choose, even if all he ever chose was a handful of stolen twigs. Ilya looks at his own hands, now roof-cracked, harder than they used to be. He can't remember the last time they held something that didn't break. He reaches into his coat and pulls out the thing he's kept since that winter. A sliver of birch, carved with Mikhail's Mark II notches, one angled cut. It's not much, but it fits perfectly between his fingers. Sometimes, he presses it to his lip like a prayer. Other times, he digs it into the dirt like an offering. Tonight, he simply holds it, lets the wind pass over it, and waits. Because even now, even years later, he half expects to hear a whisper in the branches. A laugh, a name, something. But the wind doesn't speak tonight. It only carries. And maybe that's enough. There's a rule here unspoken, but ironclad. You don't say the names of the dead unless you're prepared to follow them. It's not superstition, it's self-preservation. Names have gravity. Say one aloud, and it pulls you backward, into places your body has already escaped. Say one too often, and you might start to believe they're still around, watching, listening, waiting. And belief is dangerous. Belief is what gets you killed when you start thinking there might be more than this. So Ilya keeps Mikhail's name where it's safe, inside, pressed behind his teeth like a sliver of glass. But tonight, something frays. Maybe it's the air too still. Maybe it's the silence too long. Or maybe it's just that holding on for this long has begun to rot something inside him. He turns from the wind, cups the birch token in his palm, and whispers, "Misha." The sound is nothing, lighter than breath. Too soft to wake the hut, too small to stir even the smoke. But it's real, and the second it leaves him, he feels it, a shift. Not in the world, in himself. As if part of him had been locked in a room, and the name was the key. He remembers things he didn't mean to. How Mikhail used to whistle when he carried bucket's 3 notes, always the same. How he tied his boots with one hand. How he used to sleep with his back against Ilya's, because it's the only time we'll be warm. It's cruel, in a way. Memory always is. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care how much you've endured. It just arrives, full of weight, and demands to be held. Ilya clenches the wood so tight, the edge cuts his palm, not deep, just enough to prove the moment happened. Blood beads. The wind catches it, takes it. He doesn't cry, that stopped years ago, when the last tear froze on his cheek before it could fall. But he feels something just as dangerous. Stillness. The kind of stillness that says, "You have carried this long enough." He stays there until his legs begin to ache, until the cold seeps through the soles of his feet and climbs upward, searching for heart. Then he goes inside. The hut breathes heavy. No one stirs. He lies down. His hand still bleeds, faintly. But he keeps the token tucked tight in his fist. Not for comfort, for memory. Because names may not save the dead. But sometimes they save the living. Sleep comes, but only in pieces. Like everything else in Ilya's life, rest must be bargained, forfought, stolen, paid in pain. He drifts, not down, but sideways. In the dream, he's carrying Mikhail. Not the real Mikhail. Not the real Mikhail. Not the one who wasted away in a winter fever, but a version made of light and bone. Too light to be real, too heavy to let go. They're walking toward the tree line. It's spring. That's how he knows it's a dream. The grass is soft underfoot. The air smells like something that's been forgiven. Mikhail doesn't speak. He just looks over his shoulder every so often. Not to see if Ilya is still there, but to remind him this is not a place he can stay. And when Ilya finally stops, shaking arms, numb Mikhail smiles. Not a joyful smile, a tired one. The kind you give someone who's done enough. And then he fades. Not away, just into the trees, into the light, into whatever world the dead belong to when they no longer need to be remembered. Ilya wakes cold. Not because the fire has gone out, it hasn't, but because something inside him has cooled. Like a fever breaking. He lies still, eyes open, watching the roof for signs of change. There are none, just smoke-stained beams. A spider's web in the corner. The slow drip of meltwater from a crack in the thatch. But his chest feels different. Lighter, not empty, not full, just less burdened. Beside him, the girl has curled against his arm in the night. He hadn't noticed. Her breath is soft, even. One hand still clutching the edge of her rag blanket, like it's something sacred. He doesn't move. Because here, warmth is never yours alone. It's borrowed, shared, passed like a secret from one body to another. She doesn't stir, but he feels her weight. The small human gravity of a life not yet broken. And for the first time in a long while, he does not resent it. Because this is what they have. Not hope, not justice, each other, for as long as that lasts. Morning returns without color, just gray on gray, like someone forgot to finish painting the sky. The kind of morning that doesn't promise anything, not rain, not light, not mercy. Ilya is already awake. He didn't fall back asleep, not really. Just lay there, breathing beneath the girl's quiet weight, listening to the creak of wood, the scratch of rats, the mutterings of Baba as she rose before the sun, as she always did. She stirs the ashes, finds what heat she can, puts on the kettle with emotion more ritual than necessity. There's no tea, just hot water, but heat is flavor when you have nothing else. Ilya sits up slowly, his hand aches. The cut from last night, a small line across the palm, red and swollen. He doesn't clean it. There's nothing to clean it with. Just wraps it in a strip of cloth he tears from the bottom of his shirt. It's stiff, dirty, already fraying. But it does what cloth is supposed to do. Holds things together. The girl wakes and blinks, not surprised to see him there, just resigned to it. Like waking up next to someone isn't a kindness or a danger, but a fact of life, like frost, like splinters. Baba hands them each a cup. Warm water, they hold it like soup. No one speaks for a while. The fire doesn't crackle, it whispers. The hut breathes its usual breath, tired, damp, slow. And then someone outside says a name. Not Ilya's, not the girl's. A name they haven't heard in months. The name cuts the air like a blade. A man at the door, new, maybe, or just forgetful, asks, "Where's Stefan?" No one answers. Stefan died in autumn, worked to death hauling stone, buried behind the east wall under a tree that stopped blooming after the first frost. The man shrugs, spits, and walks off. The silence he leaves behind is thicker than before. Baba sighs. "Don't speak names if you can't carry them," she says. It's not scolding, it's grief. Ilya looks down at his wrapped hand, at the token in his pocket, at the faint ghost of Mikhail's smile, still hovering just behind his eyes. He wonders, what's the cost of being remembered? Is it pain, passed on like debt? Or is it something gentler, a kind of soft persistence? He doesn't know, but he knows this. Some names, once spoken, don't let go. They settle into you, like smoke, like hunger, like love, if you can believe in that word without flinching. He presses the cup to his lips, drinks the warm water, tastes nothing, feels everything. And for once, the nothing is enough. There's a phrase the overseer likes to use. Today's a good day. He says it when the sun is out, or when the Lord sends down old bread, or when no one has died in the past 48 hours. But mostly, he says it when he feels like being cruel. This morning, he says it as soon as he walks into the yard. Today's a good day. His voice is light, cheerful, almost sing-song. His hands are behind his back. That's always a bad sign. When they're visible, he's just barking orders. When they're hidden, he's thinking. And when he thinks, people bleed. The slaves line up without being told. That's what fear does, it trains you. Ilya joins them. His hand still aches, but he keeps it in his pocket. Injuries invite attention, and attention is currency in a place where the price is always pain. The overseer walks the line slowly, He's not a large man, not impressive, but he has something worse, permission. The kind of power that doesn't have to shout, the kind that smiles. He stops in front of a boy young, thin, already shaking. "Tuck in your shirt," he says. The boy fumbles. His fingers are blue from cold. He can't move fast enough. The overseer sighs, then strikes. Not hard, just enough to humiliate. A slap across the face that makes the boy flinch sideways and whisper sorry before his mouth has stopped bleeding. The overseer continues down the line. "Today's a good day," he repeats. And maybe, for him, it is. Because nothing resists. Because everyone looks down. Because he can say things like "good day" and make them mean you still breathe, for now. He stops again, in front of Ilya. Looks him over. "New cloth?" he asks, gesturing at the bandage. Ilya's mouth goes dry. "It's old," he says quietly. The overseer nods, still smiling. "Good to see you taking care of yourself," he says. Then leans in, voice lower. "We wouldn't want you getting soft." He moves on. The line dissolves. Assignments are given. Wood to cut, ash to haul, snow to clear. But the words, "good day," stick. Ilya spends the morning hearing them again and again, like a splinter in the ear, because he knows what the overseer really meant. A good day for who? A good day for what? There is no weather in cruelty, no fortune in surviving one more hour. There is only the rhythm, the breath, the line, and the smile of a man who thinks being feared makes him important. Ilya spits in the snow when no one is looking. Not in defiance, just because it's the only thing today that still belongs to him. The trees in the lower grove are half dead. They lean in strange directions, their bark flaking like old skin, their limbs reaching out like beggars. They still burn, though. That's all that matters. Ilya and 2 others are sent down to chop them. It's not punishment, not officially, but everyone knows that wood duty in winter is for those the overseer wants to remind. He remembers the last time he was sent here. Mikhail was still alive. They chopped side by side, laughing too loud, too long until the sound brought the lash. After that, they laughed quieter. Today, there's no laughter, just the dull thud of iron against rot, the groan of trees giving up, and the rhythm of labor so repetitive it blurs thought into muscle. Ilya's hands throb. The cut has opened again. The cloth is red now, wet and useless. But he doesn't stop. Not because he's strong, because stopping makes you a target. And being a target is worse than bleeding. One of the others, Ondrek maybe, or a cousin of Ondrek, it's hard to tell, drops his axe. It lands wrong, splintering at the handle. He mutters a curse, then goes quiet, because the sound of breaking wood always brings the overseer. Sure enough, within minutes, footsteps crunch behind them, measured, intentional. The overseer doesn't speak right away, just walks around the fallen axe like it's a corpse he doesn't recognize. Then he says, "What a shame." Ondrek doesn't look up. "I can fix it," he murmurs. "Oh, I know you can," the overseer replies. Then he picks up a branch from the pile, not heavy, but dry, snaps it in half with a sharp, theatrical twist. "This is what happens," he says, "when things are not maintained." He drops the branch. No punishment today, just the threat of one tomorrow. Because the best way to control the hungry is not to feed them or beat them. It's to remind them they are always within reach. He turns to go, then pauses, looks at Ilya's hand. He says, "It's not a question." Ilya hesitates, then holds it out. The bandage is half frozen, stuck to the wound. The overseer pulls it off without flinching. The cold air bites. The blood pulses. The overseer mutters. Then, with a little too much gentleness, wouldn't want this to get infected, he pats the hand, like a friend, then walks away, leaving the blood, the cold, and the broken axe behind him. Ilya doesn't speak. He presses snow to the cut, watches it melt, pink and slow. The others return to work, as if nothing happened, because here nothing ever does, until it does. By the time they return to the compound, Ilya's hand has gone numb, not in the dangerous way. Not yet, just that slow, creeping absence that starts at the fingertips and climbs inward like doubt. He doesn't show it. Pain has to be hidden here like food, like grief, like anything that might make you feel real. Baba notices anyway. She always does. She takes one look at the swollen hand, now half black under the cloth, and sighs through her teeth. "You'll lose it if you keep like that," she mutters. Ilya shrugs. "I might lose it if I don't." She doesn't argue, just begins boiling water. Not clean, but hot. Heat is the only medicine they have. She drops a handful of pine needles into the pot, for smell more than healing. The steam curls into the corners of the hut, making the space feel smaller, or closer. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. The girl sits near the fire again, silent, watching the way the flames move. Ilya dips his hand into the hot water. It burns, which means it's working. The pain climbs up his arm in a sharp wave. He grits his teeth, refuses to look weak. Baba hums. The fire crackles. Outside, someone screams. Just once, then silence. No one reacts. Because if the scream isn't followed by more noise, by the sounds of running, or shouting, or a second scream, it means it's over. A warning, a punishment, a reminder, the overseer's way of saying, "I'm still here." Inside the hut, the fire burns low. Too low to be useful, but too high to put out. Like hate, like memory. Ilya pulls his hand from the water. The skin is red, blistering but cleaner. He wraps it again, this time with the rag Baba offers him without a word. It smells like ash and herbs, and something older, not comfort, recognition. She sees him, not just his wound, the rest of him, the boy he was, the man he is, the hollow space between. The others eat what little is left. Flatbread, water thickened with flour. They don't speak, because the fire is listening, and the walls are tired. And the overseer is smiling somewhere beyond them all. That smile, not joy, not malice, just the quiet satisfaction of a man who believes he's right. And that, Ilya thinks, is worse than cruelty, because it means that pain isn't just tolerated, it's deserved. Later, when the fire has died down and the others are curled like roots against the walls, a whisper slithers through the dark. Not speech, not at first, just breath drawn in like a secret, pushed out like regret. Then a voice, low, familiar. "You ever think about killing him?" Ilya doesn't answer. The question hangs in the air like smoke that won't settle. He knows who it is. Gregor, probably, or one of the others who's lived here long enough to stop fearing the sound of his own thoughts. The voice doesn't ask again. It doesn't need to, because the thought is always there, like hunger. Do you kill the overseer? Do you run? Do you let yourself imagine it? Ilya rolls over slowly, eyes open in the dark. The rafters above him are cracked and sagging. He counts them like prayers. 1, 2, 3. The voice continues. "I think about it. Not often, just when he laughs." That laugh he does when someone begs. Ilya still says nothing, because answering makes it real, and reality is more dangerous than dreams. He closes his eyes, but now the thought is there. Not the act, the knife, the blood, the running feet. No, it's not about that. It's about the moment after, the silence, the absence, the space where a voice used to be. He pictures the overseer not smiling, not speaking, not standing, just gone. It's a beautiful thought, not because it solves anything, but because it's quiet. And in a world where pain is noise, quiet is rebellion. A few moments pass, then the voice says, "Forget I asked." And Ilya does. At least, he tries. But the image stays, not as a plan, not even a hope, just a possibility. And possibilities are dangerous, because they make you start counting things. How far is the knife? How slow is the overseer? How long does it take to bleed? And most of all, what happens if we win? That's the cruelest part of all. Not the fear of failing, but the fear that you might succeed and still find yourself in the same hut, under the same sky, wondering what to do next. Ilya pulls the rag tighter around his hand, feels the pulse beneath it, strong, steady. Still here, the voice doesn't speak again, but something has shifted. Not in the hut. In the dark between them, the next morning arrives, brittle, the kind of cold that makes things crack wood, skin, thoughts. Even breath feels breakable. Ilya wakes before the others, not from a sound, from the absence of one. The fire is out, not just low, dead. Even the coals are stiff with frost. Someone forgot, or gave up, or decided the effort wasn't worth it anymore. He sits up slowly. The rag on his hand has frozen to his skin. He peels it back with his teeth, careful not to wake the girl still curled beside him. She doesn't stir. Children sleep hard in winter. Their bodies know what little peace remains must be seized without mercy. He steps outside. The world is pale. Trees like charcoal sketches. The sky the color of old tin. Snow has crusted the path. Fresh tracks mark it to light for boots, too heavy for rats. Fox, maybe, or something else, looking for something else to eat. He walks, not far, just to the edge of the tree line. The axe is still there, leaning against the stump where they'd left it. A thin layer of snow on the blade. He brushes it off, runs a thumb along the edge. Still sharp, the thought returns, not loud, not urgent, just present. Do you ever think about killing him? No, not really. Yes, but not for vengeance. Not even for justice. Just to interrupt the rhythm. To see what sound the world makes when the metronome stops. He lifts the axe, not in violence, just to feel its weight. He's carried heavier. He's carried grief, after all. He swings it, one slow, clean, into the frozen stump. It bites deep. Wood splits, with a sound that feels too loud for mourning. But no one stirs. No one watches. For a moment, he is alone in a world made of frost and silence. And something shifts. Not in the trees, in the grain of his own mind. A thought full and final. The smile is only powerful if we keep watching it. He pulls the axe free, not as a weapon, not yet. Just as a reminder that even here, under this sky, with this blood, a man might still choose where to stand and when to lift his arms. Spring doesn't come all at once. It limps in, ashamed, uncertain, like a prisoner who's forgotten what freedom feels like. The snow doesn't melt so much as surrender. It recedes reluctantly, bitterly leaving behind its trail of rot and memory. Mud emerges first, thick, reluctant, alive. Not the soft mud of gardens or riversides, but something stranger mud that seems to hold grudges. Mud that remembers footprints, even days later. Ilya notices it when his boot catches on something buried. A bone, maybe, or a root. He doesn't check. It's never good to know what the earth is holding. The air is different now, less sharp, but more cruel in its way. Cold, you can fight. This is wet. Clinging, it seeps. The camp shifts with it. The fire burns longer. The smoke smells fouler. More sickness, more coughing, more things growing where nothing should. Baba calls it second hunger. Because just when you think you've survived the worst, your body starts remembering all the things it didn't get. It's a dangerous time. Appetites return. For food, for warmth, for things you're not supposed to want any more. Freedom, maybe. Names. Even dreams grow restless. Ilya feels it in his bones. A twitch, a pulse, something waking. The overseer feels it too. He walks the yard more now. Slower eyes, sharper. He knows the melt makes things slippery. Not just the ground people. Men think different when the trees start to bud, and sometimes they move. That's the fear. Not that a slave will rise, but that he will leave. No announcement, no rebellion, just vanish. Into the woods, into the marshes, into legend. But it's a hard thing, escaping. Not just the distance, the memory. Because even if your feet run, your name stays behind. Buried in the mud, waiting for someone to step on it. Ilya stands by the fence that night, hands in pockets, eyes on the forest's edge. And for the first time since the dream, he doesn't wonder if he could run. He wonders what he'd take with him. Not food, not tools, but what memory, what part of this life, this pain, this frost, would he carry on purpose? The answer surprises him. Not Mikhail's token, not the axe, the girl, not as a burden, as a tether. Because if he ever runs, he'd want someone else to know it's possible. Even in mud, even in melt, even when the world still thinks it owns you. There's a game the children start playing once the snow begins to die. They sit near the fence and count how many trees they can see before the fog swallows them. If they reach 10, they win. If they reach 15, they whisper a wish into their sleeves. No one knows where the game came from, but they all play it. Even the ones too old to admit it. Ilya catches himself counting once. 1, 2, 3, no, just 2. That third one's a stump. 4, 5. The forest looks closer in spring, not in distance, just in mood, like it's leaning in, like it's curious. He understands the feeling. They tell stories about what's out there. Wolves, of course, always wolves. And worse things, bandits, exiles. Men who ran and lost themselves in the wild, who forgot their own names and now wandered naked through the pines, howling at stars they no longer recognize. They say the forest eats men, but no one ever says whether it spits them back out. The overseer doesn't like the staring. He notices it. Too many eyes on the trees. Too many long silences when there should be work songs, coughing, noise. He adds chores. He tightens rules. He smiles more. But the thaw has already begun. Not just in the soil. In the people, something in them is loosening. Not rebellion, not yet. Just a slackening of the leash. Even the girl senses it. She spends more time by the fence, watching the crows, digging holes with a stick, writing names in the dirt and smoothing them over before anyone sees. Ilya joins her sometimes. They don't speak, But one evening, she looks up and asks, "Have you ever been past the trees?" He doesn't lie, no. "Do you want to?" He hesitates, then nods. She smiles, not like a child, like someone much older, hiding in a smaller face. "Me too," she says, then goes back to digging. He watches her for a long time, longer than is comfortable, because it's the first time in years someone has asked him about want, and he realizes he doesn't know what that word means anymore. He knows survival, knows duty, knows fear, but want, that's dangerous. Want is what lives in the bones long after the hunger fades. Want is what runs faster than feet ever could. He closes his eyes, listens to the breeze whisper through the branches. It doesn't speak his name, but it doesn't need to. The trees are waiting. There are no maps here, not real ones, just paths that live in memory turns and shadows memorized in childhood, crossings learned the hard way when someone didn't come back. But Ilya has one, a secret one, drawn in dirt, smoothed over each night. He started it after Mikhail died, not out of planning, out of grief, a way to keep moving in a world where nothing else did. He doesn't tell anyone, but sometimes, when the others sleep, he kneels beside the fire pit and draws it with the tip of a stick. A line for the fence, a cross for the grave tree, a curve for the river he's only heard in stories. The map doesn't go far, only as far as his belief will let it. But belief is a kind of ink, and the map keeps growing. Tonight, the girl sees it. She doesn't ask what it is. She just crouches beside him and watches. Her eyes scan the shapes like she's reading scripture. Her finger hovers over one curve. "What's that river?" he says. "Real?" He nods. "How far?" "Far." She nods too. Then, without asking, she draws her own line. Crooked, wide, leading away from the others. "What's that?" he asks. She shrugs. "Place I want." He almost laughs, not because it's funny, because it's the first honest answer he's heard in weeks. She smooths the dirt when they're done, gently, like putting a blanket over a sleeping thought. The fire crackles. Outside, the frogs are returning, small voices in the dark, reminding the world that it's still alive. He doesn't sleep that night. Instead, he lies awake, the ghost of the map burned into his eyes. He imagines following it, not to escape, just to move, to trade stillness for direction, even if it ends nowhere. Because even nowhere is better than here, if you reach it by choice. The girl breathes softly beside him. She doesn't know it yet, but she's part of the map now. Not a burden, a compass. He closes his eyes and sees the curve of her path, wider than his. And he hopes, without knowing how, that hers leads farther than his ever could. The first true act of rebellion doesn't look like one. No fire, no shouting, just bread, or what passes for bread. A small, hidden loaf, smuggled from the manor's outer kitchen, still warm, still fragrant, wrapped in cloth that smells like better fabric. It appears like a miracle. No one sees who brought it. No one asks. That's the rule. If kindness is a crime, then it must be anonymous. The loaf is placed beside the fire before dawn. By the time the others stir, the steam has faded, but the warmth remains. It splits 7 ways, not evenly, but fairly. Ilya takes his piece and does not ask how. He chews slowly, reverently, not because it's delicious, it isn't, but because it is theft. And theft, in this place, is sacred. Even Baba eats. She doesn't comment, just nods once, like someone has done what needed doing. The girl eats too, quiet, focused. Her eyes don't leave the window. Something has changed in her since the snow began to rot. A kind of tension, not fear, readiness. She moves differently now, her steps more measured, her gaze more fixed, as if she's waiting for something to begin. That afternoon, Ilya finds her near the well. She's not drawing water, she's watching the sky. It's a grey day, soft and uncertain, like most early springs. But there's a break in the cloud cover, a small hole of light, too weak to be useful. Still, she stares. Storm coming, she says. He looks up, doesn't see it, but he believes her. What kind? He asks. She doesn't answer. She just points to the tree line, then to the fence, then back to herself. It's not a threat. It's not a plan. It's an invitation. Something in him stirs. Not courage, but agreement. And that's almost worse. Because once two people share a decision, even unspoken, it becomes real. She drops a stone into the well, listens for the splash. When it comes, she nods, like the water answered something, then walks away. The sound of her footsteps is quiet, but the echo stays. That night, the frost returns. Not like winter, angry, sharp, absolute, but like a memory, a shiver that won't let go. The wind howls once, like a final warning, and then stillness, to still. The kind of stillness that tastes like change. The fire burns weakly. The last of the dry wood is gone. Everything else is damp, moldy, unwilling. Ilya feeds it anyway, a sliver at a time, watching the flame struggle, watching the light claw at the dark. The girl is awake. She doesn't move. She watches too. Baba's breathing is thin. Her ribs show more each day, like the body is retreating from itself. No one mentions it. The fire crackles. Outside, nothing stirs. Ilya has spent his life fearing the night, because night hides the lash, the hunger, the grief. But tonight he fears something else, that this might be the last night like this, that after this, something will shift, and whatever comes next will erase everything that came before. Not in triumph, in necessity. He touches the birch token in his pocket, still there, still smooth, still waiting. He thinks of Mikhail again, not his death. His hands, strong, cracked, always building something, even if it never lasted. Mikhail would have run. He believes that now, not out of cowardice, out of faith. Faith that the world must be bigger than this yard, this hut, this name. He glances at the girl. She meets his gaze. Neither speaks, but it's settled. Whatever happens tomorrow, they will not face it alone. There is no map, no plan, just two bodies, two memories, two hands willing to move forward. And maybe that's enough. The fire groans, then flickers out. The smoke curls once, then disappears. And they lie down, side by side, in a world already ending. It begins before the sun. No whistle, no barking orders, no clatter of buckets or shouting from the yard. Just stillness, thicker than silence, as if even the wind has stopped to listen. Ilya wakes with the sensation of falling only to find he hasn't moved at all. His limbs feel distant, but his heart is loud. The girl is already up, not standing, just sitting, knees tucked to her chest, eyes on the door. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. He rises slowly, careful not to wake the others. Baba twitches in her sleep. The boy near the wall mutters a name that doesn't belong to anyone living. Outside, the sky is a thin blue bruise. A new day trying to remember how to be born. They don't take anything, not because they are noble, because there is nothing to take. The map is in his mind, the compass is at his side, and the moment fragile trembling is here. They move, quiet as stolen breath, past the slop trough, past the empty cart, past the dog that lifts its head and blinks once, then lets them go, as if it knows, as if it's seen this story before. The gate is unlatched. That, more than anything, feels like a sign. No one leaves the gate unlatched. No one forgets a boundary. But here it is, swinging gently, like an open hand. They step through, not fast, not running, just walking. Because running draws attention, and because if they act like they belong in freedom, maybe the world will believe it too. The trees greet them with indifference. No fanfare, no welcome, just space. And for the first time in either of their lives, distance. Distance between them and the yard. Between breath and chain. Between the name given at birth and the one they haven't chosen yet. The girl takes his hand, not out of fear to anchor him. He squeezes back, not out of strength, out of need. Behind them, the compound begins to wake, but ahead only woods, and a path that remembers no names. They don't look back, not because they're brave, because they know what's behind them: mud, ash, memory, and looking at a wound doesn't stop the bleeding. The forest is not kind, but it is fair. It asks nothing. It promises nothing. It simply is. And after a lifetime of rules whispered through clenched teeth, that's almost enough to feel like freedom. Ilya walks ahead now, not leading, each step cautious but sure. He remembers this path, or what he hopes is this path. From whispered stories and hidden maps in the dirt, from Mikhail's voice in the dark, there's a river that bends like a bow. Find it and follow it east. East means trade. East means towns. East means elsewhere. But the forest does not care for plans. The roots reach up like hands. The branches grab. The underbrush whispers of teeth. Still, they move. The girl says nothing, but she doesn't let go of his hand. At one point, a crow flutters overhead and lands in a birch tree. It watches them, then caws, once, loud, sharp. Ilya freezes. The sound echoes too far, but nothing follows. No dogs, no shouts, just the groan of the forest settling into itself. They breathe again. The girl picks up a stick and drags it behind her in the mud, not for fun, to leave a mark. He watches. She doesn't smile, but she's thinking, that's more dangerous than joy. By midday, their legs are lead. They've found no water, no food, just forest and the certainty that they are farther from their past than they've ever been. They stop in a clearing, a space to open to feel safe, but too quiet to ignore. The girl sits, draws in the dirt, a circle, a cross, a line leading out. She hands the stick to Ilya. He takes it, and for the first time in his life, he draws without permission. By late afternoon, the trees begin to hum. Not with voices, no angels here. Just wind through bark, water under ice, birds that don't know they're singing over fugitives. And then, a sound, not loud, but unmistakable. Moving water, not a trickle, a river. Ilya stops. The girl looks up at him, eyes wide but not afraid. He points, and together, they make their way through a thicket of dead branches and bramble that tears at their sleeves like old hands trying to pull them home. The river appears, slowly, like it doesn't want to be found. It curves through the trees with a kind of old confidence, like it has always been here, waiting for someone to believe in it. It is not wide, but wide enough, not fast, but fast enough to carry the sound of escape, They kneel at the bank. The girl scoops water in her hands and drinks without speaking. Ilya does the same. It's cold, sharp, clean enough. But that's not what matters. What matters is the sound. Water, moving. A thing that doesn't stop. A thing that isn't trapped. He lets it run over his fingers, feels the pulse of it. Remembers what Mikhail said. Find the river that bends like a bow. It does. Right there just ahead, curving eastward, like an invitation written in geography. The girl traces it with her eyes. Now what? She asks. He shrugs. Now we follow it, even if it gets dark. Especially then, because darkness is different out here. It belongs to no one. There are no overseers behind the trees. No names waiting to be taken. No master's voice telling them which parts of their bodies are worth saving. There is only breath, step, water, movement. The girl stands. She doesn't reach for his hand this time. She just walks, and Ilya follows. Because this is not a journey back. It is a journey out of the hut, out of the yard, out of a name that was never theirs to begin with. They walk beside the river until the trees close in again, and still the water moves, like it's carrying them too. They don't speak much as the forest thickens, not because there's nothing to say, but because words feel too small for a world this wide. Instead, they listen. Two birds calling names that no one's ever answered. Two trees shedding bark like forgotten promises. To their own footsteps, new, uncertain, real. The river keeps beside them like a companion that doesn't need affection. It doesn't care who they were, only that they keep moving. They cross a fallen log, narrow, slick. The girl goes first. Arms out, chin up, feet like a memory of something lighter. Ilya follows, slower, his weight more cautious, but the log holds. On the other side, they sit for a moment, their breaths loud in the quiet. The girl pulls something from her sleeve, a leaf, broad, yellowed, split down the center like a book half freed. She holds it up. What would you call this? She asks. He blinks. It's a leaf. No, she says. What would you call it? He shrugs. Yellow. She frowns. Not a color, a name. He pauses. Then, quietly, maybe Mila. Why? I don't know. It sounds like something that stays. She nods, folds the leaf in half, and the river. He glances at the water. Rustlin, she smiles. A river with shoulders. They laugh quietly, like it's something forbidden, because, in a way, it is. Laughter is the first thing stolen. It doesn't belong to the suffering, but tonight they steal it back. They name everything they see. A rock becomes Dmitri. A bird is Alina. The sky, when it clears, is Petra. The names mean nothing, but they exist, and that makes them dangerous. Because only free people name things. Only free people imagine. By nightfall, they've named half the forest. Not to claim it, to honor it, to remember that even now, even after everything, they are still building a world, leaf by leaf, step by step, word by word. They camped that night beneath a crooked pine. The ground is soft with needles, and for once, the cold does not bite. They gather sticks, but don't light a fire. Fire smells. Fire tells. Instead, they press close beneath a scrap of cloth too small for comfort, too familiar for shame. The stars are clearer now, less like holes in the sky, more like witnesses, watching, waiting. The girl is the first to speak. Do you think they noticed? Ilya doesn't answer. He doesn't know what he hopes. that they noticed, that they didn't. If no one noticed, maybe it means they never mattered. If they did, it means someone might come looking. Either way, he doesn't want to know. She rolls onto her side, eyes searching the trees. Do you think they'll remember us? Who? Anyone? He thinks of Baba, of the boy who coughed in his sleep, of the fire that never quite warmed. He thinks of the names on the walls. No, yes, he says. Someone will. She closes her eyes. He watches her breathe, watches the wind tug at the hem of her shirt like it's trying to steal her away. He stays awake long after she drifts off, listens to the forest, not for danger, for change, because he knows something has shifted, not just in his body, in his blood. He used to believe he was made of dirt and obedience. Now he feels something else, ash from a fire that burned long before he was born, the kind of fire they used to tell stories about quietly between punishments. He used to think that fire had gone out, but tonight, with his back to the earth and his eyes to the stars, he knows better. It didn't die, it went underground, and now it burns through him. Slow, patient, alive, not rage, not revenge, just the kind of heat that melts chains one ember at a time. He closes his eyes, whispers Mikhail's name, then hers, then his own, not the name they gave him, the one he hasn't spoken aloud yet, the one that is still forming, somewhere between the river and the trees, somewhere between a wound and a promise. Freedom does not fill your belly. That's the first lesson of the long walk. By the second morning, the ache returns not sharp, but insistent, like a voice you thought you'd silenced, whispering again from the corner of your ribs. Hunger, not just for food, but for certainty. They haven't eaten since the loaf by the fire. Even that, shared and hurried, was more ceremony than nourishment. Now, their bodies remember what it means to want, to shrink, to burn slow. The girl doesn't complain, but she walks slower, stumbles once, stays quiet too long. Ilya pretends not to notice, because noticing makes it real, and real is dangerous. They follow the river as it bends sharper. The land flattens briefly, then dips low marshland, soft and treacherous. He keeps her close, points out rocks that look safe, tests the mud with a stick before each step. They pass a tree with bark clawed off in long, deep rakes. He doesn't mention it. She sees it too. They walk faster. By mid-morning, they find a bushlow, dark berries clinging to its branches like forgotten children. Not much, but enough. He hesitates, remembers stories. Berries that poison, berries that heal, but no one ever knew which was which. She eats one first, chews slowly, waits, then nods. He follows. The taste is bitter, but it's something. They pick them all. Fill the edge of his shirt. Eat until the seeds get stuck in their teeth. It's not enough, but for a while it fools the body. The girl licks her fingers, smiles faintly, then says, "Still hungry?" He nods. So am I. Not just for food, for distance, for proof, for the moment when they can finally stop running and start choosing. They keep walking. The river louder now, swollen with water. It carries branches, foam, dead leaves, old prayers. She leans against him briefly, just once, and he lets her, because sometimes the body needs more than bread. It needs a shoulder, a breath, a step forward. They walk until the sky turns gold behind the trees, and even then, they keep going. They see it just before dusk, a fence, low, crooked, half swallowed by weeds and time. Behind it a house, stone, sloped roof, smoke curling from the chimney like an old woman's finger beckoning something back. It's the first structure they've seen since the compound. Too small to be a village, too neat to be abandoned. The girl stops walking. So does Ilya. They crouch low, just past the tree line, watching. No movement, just the shape of life. Faint light in the window, a pile of chopped wood near the door, a boot left on the stoop, facing out. Ilya remembers a rule. 1 boot alone means peace, 2 means trouble. He doesn't know where the rule came from, only that he believes it now. They wait, not long. Enough to let the sun sink halfway, enough to feel the wind shift toward evening, then movement. A figure steps outside, bent, wrapped in wool, carrying something steaming in a bowl. She places it on the stoop, not looking, not speaking, just places it there, then turns and disappears. Ilya and the girl don't move. The steam rises. The smell floats meat, herbs, something warm. It's not for them, they know that. But it exists, and that changes everything. Because if someone out here makes food for someone, then someone cares. And if someone cares, then maybe the world is not entirely lost. The girl looks at him, tilts her head. He shakes his. Too dangerous. She nods, but he sees the tightness in her mouth. They move back into the trees, circle the house from a distance. No dogs, no traps, just more woods. They walk a little farther, then stop in a small clearing. No fire, just dry grass. They sit, chew on bark, on memory, on what-ifs. She curls up early, he stays awake, watches the sky again. This time, the stars blink slower. Not warmer, but closer. He thinks of the bowl on the stoop. The woman, the silence. A sign, not for him, but maybe. Someday, something could be. By morning, the frost has returned in threads. Not full winter, just its ghost. The grass crunches beneath their steps. The girl's breath hangs in the air like a ribbon that doesn't want to fall. Her hands are tucked under her arms. She doesn't complain. Ilya gives her his scarf, what's left of it. She doesn't thank him, she just puts it on. That's how care works out here. Not spoken, offered, accepted. They don't talk about the hunger anymore. It's too loud. Better to ignore it. To let it rumble and twist and pretend it's something else. Like longing or memory, they follow the river again. It has narrowed grown, more wild, more teeth. They hear it now, even when they can't see it. The constant chatter of water that does not stop to ask who listens. The girl finds a feather, black, long, curled at the tip. She puts it in her sleeve. He raises an eyebrow. She says, "It flew once, that's all." But it lingers, because that's what she is doing too, isn't it? Flying badly, painfully, defiantly, and him with her. By midday, they reach a rise. Not a hill, exactly. Just a swell in the earth. They climb it together, and on the other side a road, dirt, rutted carriage tracks, hardened in last week's rain. Horse droppings, a footprint too wide for slave shoes. Ilya stares. He hasn't seen a road since before he could remember what a road meant. Not a path, a road. A place made for going, and maybe for not coming back. The girl squints down its length. Where? Anywhere, he says. She nods, steps onto it. He follows. Because this, more than the river, more than the map, more than the dreams, this is proof that someone else has gone before them, that the world has been crossed, that the sky is shared, that footprints continue, and for the first time the hunger fades a little, not because they've eaten, but because the body, like the spirit, feeds on direction, and now they have one. The road brings sound, not just the wind or the rush of water, but voices, far off, blurred, human. They drop flat into the ditch without speaking. Instinct. Till wagons pass, the creak of wood, the low mutter of drivers. One sings softly a song without melody, more rhythm than tune. Neither wagon stops, neither driver looks left or right. And when the sound fades, the road feels quieter than before. The girl peeks over the edge. They didn't see us. Maybe they did, but they didn't stop. He doesn't answer. They climb back up and walk on, slower now, because with roads come choices, and choices are heavy. She begins to hum. Not the wagon song, something else. A tune she must have heard long ago, before frost took her voice and fear stole the rest. It's a lullaby, he knows, because it makes his chest hurt, not from memory, from lack. He joins her not singing, just walking in rhythm. They pass a fence post marked with paint, blue, peeling, shaped like a fish. He tells her it's the sign of a trader's village. She nods, eyes ahead. She's thinking now not about the past, about entry. What if they ask our names? She says, we lie. What if they don't ask? Then we lie anyway. She nods again, then stops. I want a new name. He looks at her. You already have one. No, I want mine, not theirs. He doesn't argue. He sits beside her in the dust, thinks. What do you want to be called? She shrugs. I don't know yet. That's okay, he says. You'll grow into it. She smiles, then points at him. You. He pauses, says nothing for a long time. Then, at last, Moran. She repeats it. Moran. And just like that, he becomes something new. No ceremony, no baptism, no witness. Just a boy beside a girl on a road neither of them were meant to survive, saying who they are into the wind like a promise. They reach it just before nightfall. The village is small, crooked, worn at the edges. Smoke from 4 chimneys, 3 houses with shutters closed. 1 dog too old to bark. No one on the road, no market, just presence. The kind of place that doesn't greet. It simply endures. They stand at the edge of it for a long time, not moving, not speaking, because this is the moment where the story could split, where they could turn back, or forward, or disappear. Moran, his name now steady in his mouth, glances down at her. She is looking at the houses the way you look at something dangerous you still love. She steps forward, so he follows. They pass a well, a wooden bench, a pile of wood someone meant to chop but didn't. The first door opens. A woman, middle-aged, hair tied with string, a ladle in one hand. She doesn't speak, just looks, sees the mud, the eyes, the lack of shoes. Moran prepares to lie, to beg, to invent, but the woman only says, hungry. They nod. She steps aside, nothing more. No names, no questions. Inside, a low table, a stool, 2 bowls already cooling. She hands them spoons, bread thick as walls. Stew with roots and something they don't name. They eat slowly, not greedily. They've learned what too much kindness can do to an empty stomach. The woman watches, not judging, just watching, as if trying to decide if they are real. Afterward, she brings a blanket, points to the corner of the room. Sleep there. They do. No one speaks again. No one asks. And that silence, more than the food, more than the roof, is what breaks them. Not loudly, just a tear on the girl's cheek. Falling quietly into the blanket, She wipes it away like rain. But he sees it and does nothing, because nothing needs to be done. They are here, and for one night, just one. They are not property. They are not hunted. They are not cold. They are possible. They don't stay long. The village is kind, but kindness has a cost, and eventually someone will notice. Not the woman, not the neighbors. The world. The world notices when people go missing, when property breathes too freely, when names are spoken without permission. So, after 2 nights and a morning spent folding bread instead of pain, they leave. Quietly, the woman hands them a small bundle, a heel of bread, to dried fish, and something wrapped in cloth, salt. She doesn't say goodbye, but she touches the girl's shoulder and Moran's arm, and that is enough. They return to the road, not as fugitives, as travelers. They walk slower now, not from fatigue, from intention. They've learned not just to move, but to carry something forward. They pass the river one last time. The girl stops at its edge, unwraps the feather she kept, lays it on the surface. The water takes it. No ceremony, no speech, just release. Moran watches it drift, then says, "You have a name yet?" She doesn't answer. But later, when they stop to drink, she whispers, "Lenya." He repeats it, once, twice. Lets it settle into the air. It fits, like it had always been waiting just behind her teeth. She smiles, and for the first time, it's not the smile of survival. It's the smile of ownership. Because now, even if they are caught, even if the world takes everything else, they will have chosen something. And once you've named yourself, no one can unmake you. Not entirely. They walk on. 2 names, 1 road, and a silence between them that feels not like fear, but like space. The first town they reach is nothing like the compound. No fences, no whips, no orders disguised as blessings. Just mud streets, crooked shutters, and the smell of wet bread. They approach slowly, heads low. Moran has learned how to make his shoulders smaller. Lenya knows how to vanish even while walking. But here, they aren't noticed. Not really. A man herds goats through the square. A child tugs at a cartwheel. A woman leans from a window and tosses out dishwater without looking. Life continues. And that is the gift. No one stops them. No one asks. They pass a stall selling onions. Lenya slows. Her mouth twitches not, hunger this time. Curiosity, the vendor old, toothless, chewing something grunts. "You buying?" Moran digs into his pocket. 1 coin, bent. He doesn't remember where it came from. It doesn't matter. The man takes it, shoves a handful of onions into a sack. Moran nods. "Thanks." The man doesn't reply. Just waves a fly away with the kind of boredom that makes mercy possible. They walk on, past a church with cracked bells, past a stable, past a man shouting something about leather that no one listens to. At the edge of the town, they find a bench. They sit, eat slowly, onions, raw, sharp, cleansing. Lenya says, "Do we stay?" Moran looks around. No, she nods. They finish in silence, then rise. Because this isn't the end. Not yet, not even close. This is just the first place that didn't ask. And maybe, someday, they'll find a place that answers. But for now, the road is open. The names are theirs. And the world unforgiving, brutal, enormous feels. Just for a moment, walkable. Weeks pass, or something like weeks. Time here is different, measured in footsteps and sunsets, and how long it takes for a bruise to fade. They learn to sleep in stables, to share bread with dogs, to trade stories for shelter, not real stories, not the truth, just bits of other lives, borrowed and stitched together. Lenya becomes a miller's orphan, Miran, a woodsman's apprentice turned wanderer. No one questions, because everyone has holes in their past, and everyone knows not to dig too deep. They carry nothing but the clothes on their backs and the names they chose, and somehow that feels like enough. They reach a place where the hills turn soft and the sky forgets to rain. A village with ivy on every wall and laughter in the distance. A woman with one eye teaches Lenya to dye fabric. Miran lifts stones for a man who brews vinegar. Neither job lasts, but that's not the point. The point is, they are seen, not fully, not yet, but seen enough to be given tasks, food. And on one night when the wind turns warm a song, someone plays it on a cracked lute by a fire. Lenya hums along. Miran doesn't recognize the tune, but he feels it in his chest like something soft and stupid. A child nearby asks for a story. Lenya starts to tell one about a river and a feather and two names that followed the wind. But halfway through, she stops. Not because she's afraid, because the story's not over, not yet, and she's not ready to give it away. So she smiles and says, maybe next time. And the child, being a child, forgets. But Miran doesn't, because that's when he knows. Some stories aren't for telling, they're for living. Eventually, they find work that doesn't vanish. A man with a cracked spine and too many goats takes them in, no questions. Just hands them buckets and names them quiet and strong. They answer to both. The work is hard, but the cruelty is absent, and in its place, rhythm, sunrise, feeding, washing, mending, sleep. Repeat, the goats do not care who they were. They nudge, bite, sleep in piles. They stink and they give milk. And they teach Lenya how to stand without flinching. One night, Miran sits alone under the stars. The man comes out with 2 mugs. He offers one. Miran hesitates. The man shrugs. Just vinegar with honey. It's not poison unless you drink it twice. They sit together. Miran drinks. It burns, but it's warm. They talk, not about the past, about goats, about roofs, about when the rain will return. Small things, but safe ones. The man nods at him. You could stay. Miran doesn't answer right away. He doesn't need to. The silence between them is already an agreement. Later, he tells Len. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't frown. She just says, okay, and goes back to feeding the smallest goat, the one with the twisted leg. They build a routine, not a life, not yet, but the foundation of one. And that, perhaps, is the rarest freedom of all. The choice to be still, to exist without having to prove it. To stand in one place and know it won't be taken away in the night. One evening, as the sun folds itself into the horizon, Lenya turns to Miran and says, do you think we're free? He doesn't speak, just reaches down, picks up a stone, and presses it into her palm. It's smooth, flat, carved, crudely, with 2 letters. She runs her finger over them, then smiles. Maybe not yet, he says, but we're here. Years later, though neither of them tracks time in years, someone asks for their names. It's a young boy passing through with his uncle. Dust on his boots, curious eyes too large for his face. They're mending a fence. The boy just watches, then asks, what are you called? Not who are you, not where are you from, just called Lenya. Looks at Miran. Miran looks at the field, the goats, the trees that have grown taller since they first arrived. He turns to the boy and says, Moran, then points to her. Lenya, the boy nods, and that's it. The names stay, not because they're shouted, because they're used. Because over time, they're stitched into routines. Can you ask Moran to check the roof? Lenya's good with sick kids, go fetch her. Those blankets, Lenya dyed them, and no one says otherwise, because no one else owns those names now. They're not borrowed, not whispered, not hidden under rags or behind fences. They're spoken aloud. They answer to them, and in doing so, they unmake something. A quiet rebellion, not with swords or fire, but with continuity. They grow older. Lenya's hair darkens, then greys. Moran's hands become stiff. His walk slows. His back aches when the rain comes. But they remain together. No shackles, no overseer. Only the sound of goats, of wind through trees, of their own voices calling each other home. And if anyone were to ask, did you escape? They might say no. They might say, we arrived. And in that arrival, in that choice to stay, to build, to be called, they became something no system could erase. Human, free, named, and remembered. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know it's late, and I hope whether you're still awake or already drifting somewhere softer, that this story kept you company in the quiet. If it did, if it helped you feel a little less alone, or gave your thoughts something gentle to hold on to, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. Only if you'd like to, of course. It's one small way to say you're here, and I'd love to see you again. Leave a comment if you're still awake, or tell me where in the world you're listening from. I read every one. Until next time, sleep well, be safe, and remember, the story isn't over. You're part of it. Good night.